Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. Super excited to have Justin Zenanko with us today. He is the co-founder, president, and CEO of SynerFuse and owns some other companies as well. But Justin, welcome to the show. Super excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here and to chat with you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we were obviously talking a little bit before we hopped on here about kind of SynerFuse and your mission to kind of get people off opioids and other things, which I think everybody would be really excited about. But maybe just kind of start with your origin story, background experience, how you came to be doing what you're doing now, and really kind of what the mission of SynerFuse is.
Yeah, so I grew up on a small family farm just outside of the Twin Cities in Minnetrista, Minnesota, as my dad calls it, God's country.
Yeah.
And basically grew up with a dad who had a small furniture business, and so I grew up working, in his warehouse, helping him out as necessary. And we ended up having, just a small hobby farm with about 15 head of cattle. And so learned a lot about, on a farm, you can't just sleep in or do whatever you want. It's kind of like when a calf is born in winter, you have no choice but to take care of it. Otherwise, the calf dies. If you have a family, family, and you have the other family farms around you, you kind of, you take care of each other. We'd have times where calves would get out, they'd be on the road, or you'd see a neighbor and you just pull over and help them, and no one thought anything of it. So that kind of Midwest values, really kind of was the start for me. And you do what you say you're gonna do. You lead by example. And I went to off to Simpson College down in Indianola, Iowa, and I was economics, accounting, and marketing major,
Okay.
and became trained as a CPA, so certified public accountant, and then I met this co-founder and CEO of a gene editing local biotech company
Hmm.
from St. Paul called Recombinetics, and that
Sure.
was going after the transplantation market for kidney transplantation. So the idea was you take a pig kidney, you modify it so you can put it into a patient, and they have less drugs, less rejection, better outcomes. And then that company, we raised a little over $70 million of funding. And then I found SynerFuse, which was formerly Smart Implant Systems, where I met this neuroscientist, this pain physician, and a neurosurgeon out of the University of Minnesota. And they were talking about the problem with back fusions and the issue around pain, and how a patient can literally go in to their primary care physician, your local doctor, because you're in pain. They send you off to a spine surgeon because you have compression of the nerves in your spine, so you need a decompression. But the poor outcomes when it comes to pain is there, and up to 40% of these procedures fail due to pain. So
Oh,
this concept of failed back surgery syndrome, which costs the United States over $20 billion a year, and then there's a trillion and a half that's costing the United States due to opioid misuse in this
hmm.
country. So the idea was really simply, could we do a spine procedure, a spinal fusion, the therapy of last resort, where these people need to have their mechanical bone on nerve taken care of, and can we combine a stimulator with direct nerve stimulation at the point of surgery, and can we improve pain outcomes, and can we get these patients ultimately off of opioids? And the really cool thing is we completed our enrollment in October after pain and suffering of $23 million now raised to date.
Jeez.
Yeah, and I have $2.5 million in the deal myself,
Hmm.
900,000 in our current round, But and that's the leading by example. But
Right.
we completed the surgery, these surgeries, and early data, knock on wood here, has been tremendous. And now we're starting to get, the spine doctors really enthusiastic about what we're doing. And we've kind of gone from, when we talked to spine surgeons originally, it's like, well, I have no problem. There is no issues with my procedures.
Huh.
But then when you start talking about, there's potentially a better way, then it's kind of like, and they see kind of like the early data results, it's kind of like, well, yeah, there is a better way. We should be trying to improve surgeries. We shouldn't be doing surgeries the way they were done 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago.
Uh-huh.
We should continue to, progress as society. And, when you think about opioids, who in their right mind would want to have opioids, prescribe opioids to somebody if you could avoid it?
Right. Yeah. Boy, I didn't mention this when before we hopped on, but I can totally relate. When I was in college playing football, I didn't have a fusion, but I had a discectomy where they cut part of the disc out, L5S1. But prior to that, it was pinching my sciatic nerve so bad and it was so painful. I mean, I had to have my roommate like carry my books to class because I could walk about 10 steps and I have to squat down for like 2 minutes. And I tried chiropractic and traction and everything. And it was last resort was to do the surgery. And they told me, kind of as you said here, before the surgery, they're like, there's no guarantee this works. In fact, a lot of times it doesn't. And you're super young to be having this kind of surgery. But God willing, it was such a blessing. It worked. And I mean, since college, I still every morning do my like exercises that I'm supposed to do for my back. And I've had no, I mean, again, God willing, problems since. And I was able to play, I think that was my sophomore year of college. I still was able to play 2 more years of college football after that surgery. But you talk about the pain. I mean, I've never had pain like that before or since. I mean, that was excruciating, that nerve pain. Just
Yeah,
horrible.
so you're one of the lucky ones, because your pain did not become chronic.
Right.
And what we're doing is we're taking, and an RIP portfolio, by the way, covers the discectomies, the laminectomy, and the
Okay.
fusion. We started with fusion because fusion is the therapy of last resort. And stimulation, interestingly enough, for pain is the therapy of last resort. They try to do all these,
Really?
all these other conservative measures, but over a 5 to 10 year period of time, through all the injections, all the drugs, you finally may get a stimulator if you're actually proactive enough as a patient. But it's hard because there's so much information out there, so much different ways of treating pain. But the reality of it is that this chronic pain, which is defined as, they measure pain from 0 to 10. It's 5 or greater, from 5 to 10, and if it's more than 3 months, that is how they define chronic low back pain.
Okay.
And all of our patients had to meet that criteria, plus be indicated for a fusion, which has never been done before.
Huh.
And think of your nerves like a garden hose. That's the best way that I've found to describe it. If you have a garden hose and you just drive over it, that hose is deformed, but then it goes back. In your case, it went back, and you don't have those damaged nerves firing off these miss signals. But if you have a lot of weight for a long period of time over a garden hose, it doesn't go back to normal. It's
Hmm.
deformed. And the problem is when that's in your back, the first and only time to really treat that is at the point of surgery. Once you have a fusion and those nerves scar over,
Hmm.
you can't access those nerves. Those nerves are you can't access them, and when they go to treat you, they have to go above. And a lot of times pain stimulators go in the thoracic, so right in the the midsection, and they don't
Okay.
actually go to where your surgery took place. We're the only ones in the world where we actually are putting stimulation at the point of surgery, and no one knew if it would actually work.
Uh-huh.
But it's kind of like, back on the farm, common sense. Well, if you dig a hole and you put water in there, well, water fills up the hole. Well, maybe that will address the pain, maybe. And, we took a risk. And of course, when we started off, this is kind of, from an entrepreneur's perspective, it's kind of like if you don't realize what you're doing,
Uh-huh.
that's kind of maybe the best way to start
Right.
because
Exactly.
you don't understand how bad it is from a
Uh-huh.
funding perspective. Well, I was told when we started it would be like $1 million. $23 million later, it's like, okay, we're off by a factor of 23.
Uh-huh. No, that's the truth. That's the truth. So as things are developing, any other opportunities or applications you're seeing in the market for Synerfuse?
Well, it's really improving spine surgeries and
Hmm.
focus on the spine surgeon because the spine surgeon is the person who is dealing with the nerves. They're creating the room from the bone on bone, bone on nerve. They're doing the decompressions. It's just they've never had a stimulator custom designed for them. It's kind of like, if you wanted to do it, you have to find a really talented spine surgeon that's going to think outside the box. But even if they think outside the box, there's chances that the payers might not even
Mm.
go and do and might not even reimbursement. And that's the issue. We have no codes right now for what we're doing. There's codes
Okay.
for stem, there's codes for fusion, but never have the two been combined. And the scary thing here is that if you were to look at this from a pure payer's perspective or a med device company's perspective, you would never even approach this problem because, you might not get it paid for, which is
Yeah.
crazy to me because we have 600,000 fusions in this country per year.
Wow.
You have another 500,000 laminectomies and decompressions per year. So you have 1,000,001 spinal procedures, and we're not addressing the number one driver, which is the pain. And the theory is that you take pressure off the nerve gets restored.
Uh-huh.
And in some cases, like in your case, that's awesome. That's great. Like thank God that that worked.
Right.
But from what I've learned and from what I've seen from patients firsthand were in our feasibility study, and just to make this very clear, this is not FDA approved. This has
Sure.
not been through all of the standards that's going to be necessary, which will be our next round of funding for a
Hmm.
big national trial. But the problem that we face is that when we have the lack of innovation in our industry, and it's because of the fear of not getting a procedure paid for, and we have opioid abuse, we have
Mm.
people that are becoming disabled, we have people that are not being able to work. I mean, tell somebody who is really in pain that their pain isn't real,
Right.
or tell somebody who is in pain that we're not going to fix you because of the cost of a procedure.
Uh-huh.
And there's no way that is correct for society, especially a society like the United States of America. We should not be having conversations about the price of procedures. We should be trying to make more procedures more affordable,
Right.
and we should be trying to help these problems that exist today. And the problem is the big companies won't do it because they're more concerned about short-term results of a quarter
Yep.
than they are about the long-term results of you know the way Medtronic got started was with Earl Bakken seeing a problem, and
Uh-huh.
he addressed it. He didn't know if he was going to get paid for it. Didn't matter. It mattered that he could actually help a surgeon fix a problem.
Yeah.
And that's the same spirit that we're taking with SynerFuse, because at the end of the day, I'm on a mission to make sure that when people go for a procedure, especially a spine procedure, that they are getting the best tools that can be applied and have a way to actually treat their pain without having to go down the road of narcotics.
Yeah. Ugh. I even saw in my research prior to our show here that you can adjust the once it's in, you can adjust it on your smartphone, like the patient can, like the stimulation.
Yes. Yep. Yep. And that's something that's never been done before for a spine fusion patient. So for example, we've had a couple. So normally what happens is a patient gets a spinal fusion procedure, and that's a huge procedure that gets done. They open up your back, and
Yeah.
the surgeon is basically getting you back to being anatomically correct, where everything's supposed to be. And the problem is that as you're going down that road to recovery, that can be a very painful process, because you got nerves that are healing, you got bones that are healing, you got tissue that's healing. And normally what would happen is a doctor would be forced to prescribe opioids
Yep.
because there's no other choice. Well, in our procedure and in our feasibility study, I know that there was a case where the patient needed opioids, or wanted opioids, because they're in terrible flare up. And the doctor actually said, "We need to have you talk to the clinical specialist, the technician." They changed a couple of the settings on the device remotely,
Huh.
and their pain, the need for needing that prescription went away.
That's unbelievable. Wow.
Now, if we can do that across this country, how great of an opportunity would we actually have?
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, and of course, I have to be somewhat careful, but the reality of it is that when you know something works, and you know something is leading to, on a small sample size of 15 patients, both single level and two level fusion patients,
Hmm.
and we're seeing this early results and this early data, it gets you incredibly excited about the future, because I know that, like, when we started, it was just an idea, it was a concept. Now we're seeing it, and we're seeing the surgeons getting very excited about the opportunities to actually address this issue, which before it was kind of like what they had to say to you, well, there's no guarantee, and there's no guarantee. And again, there's surgery is surgery, right?
Right.
There's never a guarantee on anything. But why wouldn't we throw everything at it that we could to make these surgery outcomes better?
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, I mean, it's our American free market capitalist society allows an entrepreneur and an idea to do it exactly what you're doing when big companies that are established don't want to take the risk, or they're too slow to move on things like this. I mean, that's why that's the beauty of this country and capitalism and free markets, to let entrepreneurs take the risk and go for it and solve complex, interesting, super tough problems and just put it all on the line.
Absolutely. And, the other hard part too is, I know a lot of my cohorts of CEOs and these other medical device companies that are not co-founders, they're backed by VCs and private equity, which has a whole different approach and outcome, same views as these strategics, but
Sure.
the reality of it is that these guys are, they're all looking to sell. Well, I
Hmm.
got to make sure I can sell. I got to make sure I have every little box checked and we have all this stuff figured out. Well, That's not how you innovate. To innovate, we got to move everything forward. And the other reality of it is that as I think about this more and more, we're what everyone wants to hear is, well, we're going to go sell to a big strategic and we're going to get our
Mhm.
big payday. Well, those strategics where you're going to go get your big payday, those are the strategics who would never have innovated it.
Right.
And the question mark then comes to, do we really want these strategics to be the ones to push this technology forward since they failed to even get it, the ball up the hill or the rock up the hill, the stone up the hill? Like,
Mhm.
if you're unwilling to carry the water, to the top of the mountain, I don't know if I necessarily want you carrying it with me down. And
Right.
and you know, and I'm probably saying something that I should be very careful of. But the reality of it is that if you're worried about it, then why are you less worried about it now? Oh, because we proved it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that to me is, it's not, the way that the Medtronics of the world used to be, which were innovative companies, is no
Right.
longer.
Yeah.
It's all sales and manufacturing. There's no innovation, and you wonder why we're not seeing medical device move forward. It's because you got people that are focused on the wrong stuff.
Yeah. So when you mentioned not doing VC or private equity, how have you done your rounds of funding? Who have been your investors?
It's all angels. It's
Okay.
all individuals, and it's all people from my network. We're also working with a broker dealer.
Okay.
So, back in the way it was done back in the 80s,
Huh.
where you call your broker and your broker calls you and says, "Hey, I got this great deal," and we're going down that road, but I mean, it's really word of mouth, and it's knowing people, and it's all about, investing personally, and, with myself leading every charge.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, and with you investing and leading the charge and, kind of modeling that servant leadership, maybe chat a little bit about growing up on the farm and doing what you're doing now, just how you've incorporated servant leadership into your philosophy and how you're running Centerfuse.
So it really comes from, how I was raised by my dad and my mom, and it was do what you say you're gonna do and never promise something you can't deliver. And, if you do something and you make a mistake, you admit your mistakes and you talk about it and you move forward. There was never a thing, and this is, in big companies, it's kind of like you make a mistake, you're out.
Right. Yeah.
You're wrong. They take you out back behind the shed, and you don't come back. And growing up on the farm, you need every hand on deck. You can't afford having somebody leave or go. You have to work with them and work through things and push things to get better. And if there's a problem, you talk to the other individual to doing that. So from my growing up on that farm, if I didn't do my job or I did my job poorly, others suffered, being my mom and my dad
Uh-huh.
and my brothers. But the reality of it is that if you do your job or if there's a problem and you address the problem, you're held accountable, and it makes you a better person for it, but it also makes you able to handle conflict
Mm.
a lot better. But and again, there's loyalty on the farm too, and you're loyal to your family, and I view Centerfuse as a family. You're loyal to your family, and you lead by example, and that's kind of how I take in the approach with Centerfuse. It's like, well, if it, from a valuation perspective and everything else, well, if it's good enough for me and I want to buy it,
Uh-huh.
then it's good enough for someone else to buy. And because I have such a large investment made in the company, I can't run.
Right.
I can't give up. I can't say, "Oh, I'm sorry, here's the keys back. Take it from me, Mr. VC." It's I owe everybody who's invested, to do my best and to protect their investment and my investment and to continue to move everything forward. And, it's having tough conversations, but it's also making sure that you're communicating, giving updates, giving as much information as possible and still being compliant, which is becoming more
Uh,
increasingly difficult because of SEC counsel, general counsel, FDA counsel, IP counsel. Like everywhere I look, there's an attorney, and
uh-huh.
attorneys are good, but it's kind of like whatever happened to, if you make an investment, you're taking a risk, understanding you're
Uh-huh.
taking a risk, and guess what? The moment I know a budget is wrong is the moment I created it because something changed from the date that I put it on paper. Something
Uh-huh.
changed.
Uh-huh.
When we started our clinical trial, we did not know that COVID was going to hit.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we were 18 months behind. Now, if we were backed by a VC or a private equity firm, they would have shuttered the place down because, oh, it doesn't work. You can't get any traction. And that's not the case. The case is that when you're going through these problems in real time, you have to have the fundamental belief in what you're doing and the passion behind it that you don't stop. Because the moment you stop is the moment you die.
Yep. Absolutely. How about you maybe touched on this here, but what's any particular leadership lesson that you've learned that's been professional or particularly valuable to you?
So the leadership lesson is make sure well, there's several of them, but the biggest one is having integrity, do what you say you're going to do.
Mm.
And if you have a problem, talk to your partners, talk to your staff and be straight up with them. But then the other thing is, and this is one that I've been kind of talking about more and more just because of, going through the trials and tribulations of a startup and running a company, is you have to have loyalty
Mm.
to your people. You have to have loyalty to the idea. And there's a lot of people who are not that way. They're looking to try to gain something, they're trying to take something. And when you don't have the moral authority, meaning you didn't co-found it, or you don't have the money behind it, or you're not dealing with all the other stuff that you're doing as the CEO and co-founder, you need to understand that this didn't just happen by accident. It happened by getting teams put together
Uh-huh.
towards an idea and doing something very, very hard. But you have to have loyalty to what you're doing. And there's a lot of people who are not loyal. And unfortunately, those people should not be in an organization where you're trying to achieve something that is very hard to do.
Uh-huh. Oh, so much sense. How about culture and core values? How important is that to you in building within the organization?
Oh, culture is everything. If you're gonna go to war, and I view it as war, people don't
Uh-huh.
like that term because today's people are so concerned about how you're gonna come off, and I'm concerned too, but I guess I'm not as concerned
Uh-huh.
because at the end of the day, if they don't take the time to get to know me, that's their problem, not my problem.
Uh-huh.
But when you are building a company, culture is everything because you have to like the people you're dealing with. And if you don't like the people you're dealing with, or you don't trust the people you're dealing with, and again, that overarching principle of loyalty and integrity, like we can handle a lot of problems, but if you're not going to be straight up with me and you're not going to be loyal to what we're doing, how do you build something
Uh,
that's very hard to do? And you don't want to have someone in the bunker with you as you're doing trench warfare and then they're shooting at you.
right.
You can't build an organization that way. And the thing is that the moment there is a cultural misfit, the best thing to do is to admit the mistake, and as the leader to take accountability and to remove that individual from your organization. And you don't be mean about it, but and sometimes there's just misfits. But if you get the wrong culture, or you have someone that's a big corporate culture coming into a small entrepreneurial culture, or someone that expects someone to do the work for you. And we have many examples of that where people, expected, well, they just showed up and they give an order and it's going to be followed through. Well, that's
Uh-huh.
not here. You have to actually roll up your sleeves and you actually have to work on a computer. You actually have to do the hard things. And a lot of times that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Like core values are like front and center in our organization. That's how we hire. That's how we fire. That's how we promote. That's how we, reward people. And it's like, but like you said, you don't have to be mean. Like this is the core value that you're violating here. You know, let's try to turn this around. And as time goes on, all right, you're unable to like embrace this core value. Like this is not a fit, and it's not anything bad about you necessarily, but there's another culture out there that will be a better fit, better core values for you in another organization. And like we're helping you find that because this is not the right fit. So how would you describe your culture?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, if I mean our it's hard. I mean, the biggest thing is our culture is around our mission, which is to disrupt the pain space for spinal fusion. It's bringing together highly talented people who are there because they have skill sets and experiences that I don't have. A team, right? Diverse backgrounds, diverse skill sets. And you have a really big challenge when you have to bring in people from all walks of life into your organization to accomplish a goal.
Uh-huh.
It's bigger than yourself, right? Meaning, if I do my job correctly, long gone after I'm dead or out of the organization, it can continue without me. That to me is real success, is where you build something that perpetuates without you.
Yes.
So it's having everyone needs to be aligned to the mission, and then it's about what can we do to make this place better. And it's open communication, it's having the integrity, it's having the loyalty, it's having optimism.
Mm.
So many times I cannot tell you how much of a cancer it is when you have people with negative opinions,
Huh.
and they're gossiping, they're talking, behind your back, and they think that that's just going to work and it's just going to go away. Well,
Hmm.
everything you say eventually comes, what's hidden becomes into the light. And, it's really simple. Just do what you say you're going to do, and you have to be accountable. And you can't blame anyone else. Like at the end of the day, it would have been very easy for me as CEO to have blamed other people for not getting the clinical trial done sooner.
Uh-huh.
But at the end of the day, as me as the CEO, the head of the organization, it all falls on me. So
Right.
even if the lowest person messes up, that's my fault, not their
Hmm.
fault. It's my fault. And that's that servant leadership. And, not to get religious on you or anything, but Jesus showed that by showing the apostles how to live, how to go forward,
Absolutely.
and they changed the world. That didn't
Right.
happen by accident. That happened because of a servant leader. And very much today, we don't have servant leaders. We have people who don't take accountability, or they love to say, it's my truth.
Yeah.
Well, what is my truth?
Right.
If I lived by that, I'm going to tell you, the world will be a much different place
Hmm.
because things that are not right and things that are not acceptable to society, those things perpetuate because we tolerate nonsense.
Right. And there's no guiding light or guidepost. Like there's the truth, and in that truth, it gives you the freedom to do what's permissible, right? But if your truth is your own and you can create it and it's shifting and like then that creates, you talk about, everyone talks about mental health in our country, then that's anxiety because you don't know what's right and what's wrong, and you can decide today and change it tomorrow. There's comfort and courage in like, this is the truth, this is the way, this, in your organization, this is the mission. It's crystal clear. I mean, do you align with this or not? Are you on board for this? Are you going to go to war with us to do this? It simplifies things too.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when you're dealing with spine surgeries on people's backs and they are suffering from pain, my truth or my relativity is unacceptable.
Right.
It doesn't matter how I feel about it. What matters is what are we doing? Are we making you better? Are you getting better or are you getting worse? And we cannot, we have to get away from thinking about, all of the relativity of, well, that's okay. You tried one time at work, the other time it didn't work. No, how do we continue to advance the ball forward? And if we had that mindset, our greatest innovations never would have occurred.
Right. Exactly.
We would have stayed in the dark ages. And the reality of it is that we have to have leaders step up and take stands, and sometimes they're not going to be popular.
Right. Usually, you're doing the right thing if it's not popular and you're upsetting people, you probably know you're on the right path.
Well, yeah, and by the way, it's kind of like, and as another entrepreneurial guidepost, like if I'm not messing something up or failing,
Yeah.
I'm not trying hard enough.
Right.
And a lot of days I feel like a failure, a lot of times. And what also is really hard too is, and I've had to learn this the hard way, you don't celebrate your wins.
Yes.
Because when a win happens for me, it was supposed to happen.
Exactly.
But the reality of it is that when you have wins, you need to take the time to give honor where honor is due
Hmm.
to your team, celebrate with your team, celebrate with your shareholders, with your constituents, and really, take the time to understand that life is more than about accomplishing goals, but it's really recognizing the people around you. And again, if you're going to build something that's going to last, you got to have people motivated to carry that mission beyond you, and where they're willing to talk about, oh yeah, I work for SynerFuse because SynerFuse is a great place to work, and
Uh-huh.
they care about what I care about. They care about our families. They care about advancing technology forward, and we're doing hard things.
Right. Yeah. No, I was literally, you talk about just like the loneliness of being an entrepreneur and just feeling like you're failing all day long, which we are. I'm, it helps to be in other with groups of entrepreneurs where you can talk about those things. You don't feel like you're out on an island. And literally just yesterday in my group, we were talking about not celebrating your wins. And it's like you expect to win. And again, I played football up at St. John's in Collegeville back when John Gallardi was the coach. And he would always get so upset. We didn't do this because he would kill us. But when he saw people score a touchdown and start dancing and doing all this stuff, he goes, "You should expect to be in it. It shouldn't be a surprise. You just scored a touchdown. That's where you expect to be. That's what we expect to do. You don't need to throw a celebration. Just walk over to the ref, hand him the football because this is what you expect to do every day on every play you're expecting to score." Um, But anyway, and then again, in this, you're literally taken out of the group yesterday. We were talking about when you do have wins, honor your teammates, honor your people, and let them feel the recognition of that. And but when you fail, then it's on you, and you take that off of them, and you take credit for the losses. Um,
Well, and there's nothing
yeah,
else that builds your organization
right.
better when you have a failure and you are the one who takes the blame and says, "I'm sorry. We're going to do better. We're going to fix it." Whatever it is, you're the one who takes the bullets in the chest,
Yep.
and you don't let them take bullets because they're your team. They're the people that are gonna help you make the thing happen. And if you scapegoat them, and send them off to the wilderness,
Yeah.
I got news for you. Do not expect them to be there for you.
Right. And they won't trust you.
No,
Yeah.
that's right. And trust is everything. I mean,
Yes.
by you don't build great companies by churning code and running, or churning on the people who you're building the company with. And the biggest betrayal is when you have people that you consider brothers in
Mm.
the war with you, and they churn on you.
Yes.
And they should not expect kindness. They
Right.
should not expect to stay on the team. They should be expected that they're no longer part of the team. And in
Mhm.
some societies, it's a heck of a lot worse.
Right. Yeah.
But but the way, thank God, me coming to my faith, I've realized that, you know, at the end of the day, I believe God puts you in positions and to have experiences to help guide you and build you. And the only time you build is in adversity. You never build
Yes.
when you are winning. When you're
Hmm.
winning, you become arrogant, and you become overconfident, and you become complacent. Well, of course, I'm just so good. And of course, the moment you think that, that's when you get smacked with something, and now you're back down to trying to figure out, what was I thinking, or what was happening. And these little lessons are given to us to help us build, but hopefully transcend that wisdom to the next leader who's in your organization or in society, to help them advance, so maybe they don't have to go through the same crap that we had to go through.
Right. Yeah. And it's like no great innovation or accomplishment has ever happened without struggle and suffering and losing. It's just not, it's not possible.
Correct.
Yeah. How about talking about your team? What any particular approaches you use or techniques to attract and retain like high performance leaders within your firm?
So it's finding the highly talented individual. So I'll talk about our chief medical officer, Dr. Rohan Lal, who is a top spine surgeon at M Health Fairview.
Okay.
Believes in what we're doing, willing to put his reputation behind what we're doing, co-invented the ET lift, which is our procedure,
Okay.
and talking about doing something really hard and talking to other spine surgeons about how to advance the ball forward. It's having the respect of doing something really, tremendous, if you will, from a skill set of. So he's a top spine surgeon, something I could never do.
Uh-huh.
Me being a CEO and raising, tens of millions of dollars, almost probably $100 million, I will have raised in my, tenure between recombinetics and SynerFuse. But and that's something. So you kind of have this fisherman from afar of different skill sets, and like, oh, you've raised this, you've done over 3,000 spine procedures, and you have great results, and you kind of come together over a problem. And the way that I would say that you really attract and you retain is you have to have that mutual respect, and you also are on the same page of the problem you're solving. But then it's also you really have to incentivize of, and what we have, the way to do that is with equity.
Uh-huh.
You give them the ability to have a piece of the pie, and you don't get into this. This is another thing that is something that can become a struggle, I think, for entrepreneurs. Well, it's my company. It's I want 100% of it. And it's like, no, you have to share that pie with the others and make sure that they have a stake at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you really need them, if they have a stake at the table, they'll go to hell and back for you. They'll figure out they'll take the call, at after work hours and take away from their family. They'll be there with you to figure out how to move forward. And they're not sitting there, well, why are you calling me? Or I'm on the clock. There's nothing worse
Mm-hmm.
than having a culture where somebody, it's lunchtime or dinner time or it's after hours and you can't get a hold of someone because, well, that's my personal time. That's my family time. Don't bother me. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, no, if we're going to win, we have to have people that are available and will do what's necessary to win, which is time. You're not counting your hours. If someone's at your organization counting hours,
Yeah.
that's not a good fit. They
Nope.
need to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. How about investing in people? Like, what does that mean for you and within Centrifuge to invest in your people?
Well, it's time, talent, and treasure.
Mm.
You spend the time with them, you spend your treasure with them, the money and your talent. You give them the advice, or you help bring in other people that can give them better advice if you're not the one to talk to. And that can be hard too, because a lot of times you want to pretend that you can solve all the problems, or you have all the
Uh-huh.
solutions or all the answers, and you don't. It's like, well, if you want to talk to someone about this problem that you're having, well, then let's go find the person who can actually help us accomplish that goal, not the other way around where, and this is a bad culture too, where if someone's not willing to tell you about a problem and they try to
Right.
hide it, it's like, no, tell me about the problems right away so that way we can solve it together. And I'm not going to look at you and say, well, why didn't you solve it yourself? Or what, or, oh, you don't have the skill set. It's like, oh, you identified a problem, you attempted at it. And sometimes we want to attempt it on our own and you just go in circles,
Mm-hmm.
versus bring it to the table and let's address it and let's figure out how we do it together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How about looking back, any particular decision or action that you've taken that you would say has been most pivotal to your success thus far?
Not taking no.
Hmm.
When you have everybody lining up against you and they're, telling you, no, you can't do this or you shouldn't do this, and deep down it's the right approach, it's the right move, and you're working night and day on the problem. And that's the other hard part too, is when you have enough of economics, your own economic resources, and personally at risk, and the other people around you are not,
Hmm.
it is extremely hard for them to have that moral authority over you. Because at the end of the day, you have to move everything forward, no matter what. And you can't sit there and, if you're, if, and again, I don't know what I know is that in the end, if I have a lot on the line and I'm all in, then unless something is really off course and you have advisor after advisor after advisor and people around you saying, "Oh no, you're way off." If you have a group of people who don't have anything in it or very little in it and not at the same level, then you have to also ask yourself the question, what is the motive?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they're not always aligned with you either. I mean,
Hmm.
things change and people change, but I mean, it would have been very easy for me to have quit when we were delayed in our trial.
Uh-huh.
And we had to go through the University of Minnesota. We had to deal with all these roadblocks. And it would have been very easy to have said, well, we must have been wrong. This doesn't work. We can't get the thing moving forward. It's going to cost too much money. But it's kind of like if you're an entrepreneur, it doesn't matter who's in office, it doesn't matter what
Sure.
the economic
Yes.
thing is, you just figure out how to make it work and you solve the problem.
Uh-huh.
But it also takes people who are creative and are scrappy to get the job done.
Yeah. How about any advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs, people that are thinking about starting their own thing or solving a difficult problem that they've identified?
Just start.
Mm.
If you analysis produces paralysis and fear, and if you are looking at something and you immediately have fear about whether or not it's going to work or success or man, I don't know if I can do this or it's really hard, you're probably on the right path of
Mhm.
doing something, and you just have to start and focus on the things you can control. Don't worry
Mm.
about the things you can't control, because if you can't control it, it's a waste of time, energy, and effort. But if you can control it, start, keep moving forward. And the other reality too of it is that if you're not willing to put your own money in,
Mm.
then you probably have no business in starting a company.
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably very harsh for probably 90% of the people who are entrepreneurs, because it's like, well, I don't have money. Well, figure out how to get money, borrow money, or start saving money in your other jobs, or take another job.
Uh-huh.
I'm not saying that is easy to do, but I know that if I didn't have my own money in the deal, I would not be as true to myself and to my company as I would be if I was not. Like
Mm-hmm.
if I didn't have as much skin in the game, it would have been too easy to have quit.
Yeah.
And again, when you take other people's money and they invest in you, they're investing in the company, but more importantly, they're investing in the leader. Can you get it done? Do I believe you're going to get there? You have a responsibility to
Yes.
protect their money and to grow their money. And that's why I like being in the same boat as all my shareholders and investors, because if I'm in the same boat as them, I'm going to think about what's best for them, not what's necessarily best for me. And it's hard to sometimes think outside of that, but it's about when you align your interests with the people who are with you, with
Mm-hmm.
if your employees are aligned, with your officers, with your board members, with your shareholders, and they're all aligned, well, then it becomes very easy in making those decisions.
Yeah. Huh. How about, and maybe it's premature to ask this, but we'll ask it anyway. How are you working to build a lasting legacy, either in Centrifuge or just in your life? Just how are you thinking about legacy and what you're building for the future here?
Well, the biggest thing for legacy is doing right by others. I don't want to see my maker, and learn that I could have done better.
Uh-huh.
I want to leave it all out, and even if I fail, even if the big system takes me down, I want to basically be able to say I put it all in. And if I put it all on the line, I put it all in, and I failed, I can live with myself. If
Uh-huh.
I hold anything back,
Yes.
I can't live with that because it means I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
Hmm.
And and at the end of the day, I mean, I believe that our principles and values come from God. I believe that we are to make the world a better place, and we are to think outside of the normal confines of business, which is just to make money. It's to make sure that we leave a better society. We have good paying jobs. We have better outcomes for patients, because at the end of the day, if we do all that right, I know and I feel that that is the legacy.
Hmm.
Like if I can change one person's life for the positive,
Uh-huh.
and I know that we have done that for our patients that have been in our surgeries, their lives are forever changed. And, that was worth the investment of 23 million.
Yeah.
Now, do I think that the investment's going to be worth a lot more? Absolutely. That's why I'm working every day on trying
Uh-huh.
to make this a better outcome. But I want to change the lives of millions of people. And that is the lasting legacy. If someone in the end doesn't have to go down the addictive opioid route,
Yes.
and they're able to get back to their lives, and we can help treat the 50 million people in this country that have chronic low back pain, that that's what we should be doing. And the same thing goes with all these other diseases: cancers, Alzheimer's, dementia. There's all of these terrible diseases out there, and we need as a society to be investing in more of these. And it's okay to, not all of them are going to work, but we should be advancing them. And that is the legacy, is moving the ball forward and having a better society.
Yeah. You're helping the patients, the people on opioids, the people who are addicted to opioids get off that, but then it goes even beyond them to their families, their friends, the people that are impacted by their lives. I mean, it's the ripple effect is huge.
Yeah, and what's that worth? I can't even put a number on it. It's
Yeah.
so, and that's when you're solving the right kind of a problem, because the numbers are so large and so out of this world from my simplistic mindset of, like, how do you quantify it? I can't quantify it, but I know one thing. If we have people that are back to work and are able to have that conversation with their loved one, and they're able to be back in society and being productive and being a loving family member, what is that? What is that worth? And we won't know. I think only God knows. But
Right.
one thing I do know is that our country will be a much better place, and this world be a much better place, if we can get rid of opioids and get rid of pain and get people where, let's get to the point where we don't have to be dealing with the scourges of society, which is opioids and other addictions.
Yeah. Amen to that, Justin. I think that's a perfect way to end. I just want to again thank you so much. This has been fascinating and uplifting, and just thank you very much. I really, really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate just the chance to speak with you, and to be here today. And it really, this this and the work you're doing and bringing on entrepreneurs to speak about, their companies and the problems they're solving is really important. So I really appreciate the work you're doing and, trying to make this place a better place.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. We'll chat soon here. Thank you so much.
Yep, thank you.
You bet.
Bye-bye.